Hi there.
Pretty good.
Come tomorrow. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome both in the sanctuary and online to the Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of St. Petersburg. We currently sit on the unceded ancestral lands of the Tocobaga and Seminole tribes. My name is John Motter. I'm a member of this church and also on the worship committee. The committee works closely with Reverend Ben as part of our shared ministry, and on the weekends that he's out of town, we fill in and provide the service. So he will be back in the pulpit again next week. I'm happy to be joined by Aaron Cassette, John Arterton, James Mack, and the UU St. Pete Bell Choir for today's music. Miss Trish is leading our Time for All Ages, and today's worship associate is Bianca Hatten.
Thanks, John, and good morning, friends. Hey. If you want a church where Black Lives Matter, where books are not banned, where we strive to treat all people fairly and kindly, where each person is free to search for what is true and right in life, I have good news for you. You may have found your church home.
Today is a continuation of our month's theme of the gift of heritage and our UU saints. Today we'll be honoring Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, one of the first African-American women to be published in the United States. In addition to being a poet and writer, she was active as an abolitionist, a suffragette. She was a temperance activist, so sorry for the people that attend the UU on tap. She would not have approved of those meetings. She was a teacher, a public speaker, and so much more. Today is also the third Sunday of the month when we try to use ASL applause rather than clapping. This is for our attendees that use that silence to contemplate or meditate on what they've just heard. We're not always successful at this, but we'll do our best.
Sorry, I was saying hello to Ed. Okay. This past Sunday, I have a couple of announcements. This past Sunday, the Minister Search Committee and the Board of Trustees jointly announced their decisions to vote. The vote is to call Reverend Ben as a settled minister. In order to better understand the process and what it means to call a minister, there will be a workshop after service entitled More Than Sunday Morning, Understanding Shared Ministry. It'll take place here in the sanctuary immediately following the service. It will also be available on Zoom, and there is a room number. It's 970-4519-4602. I hope you all remembered that and can recite it back. So grab a cup of coffee and join us back in the sanctuary for this important conversation. Our second announcement is that the Living Pledge to End Racism workshop will still be held in Conway South today. That is to allow for an outside rental of the sanctuary beginning at 3 o'clock. The shared ministry workshop should be finished in time, but if needed, they will adjust the start time.
Thanks, Bianca. And I'll try to remember to repeat the Zoom link again at the end of the service. So if I forget, somebody call out to me. As Unitarian Universalists, we are a people of diverse beliefs, but we share a common faith, a faith that every person is worthy of love, that what we do in this world matters, that we are connected to one another and to the earth. So whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are welcomed here.
We give a special welcome to any newcomers. If you are new to UU St. Pete or relatively new, can you give us a brief wave? Wave. Hello, hello, hello. You are under no obligation to do so, but if you would like to introduce yourself or say a sentence or two, you can, and John will bring the microphone around to people so that people online can hear. So is there anyone who would like to speak?
And talk into it like it's an ice cream cone.
Hi, I'm Aaron Bray. I'm not exactly new. I've been coming here for a couple months, but it's my dad's first time coming here today.
Oh, hi, Dad.
Your father's son. Yeah. Welcome.
Oh, ice cream. Good morning. My name is Mercedes, and I am here at the invite of Susan. I'm not new to this area, but this is my first time joining you all. Thank you.
Great. Glad you're here. Anybody else? I'm next on the script, so I better hurry. So, thank you for silencing your cell phones. Regarding masks, we still are not mandating them, but since several in our community have reported being exposed to COVID, we encourage anyone who wishes to wear one, and masks are available at either of the entrances. Let's take a moment to greet our neighbor. Remember to get consent if you are going to hug them or shake their hand. Boy, your guys are on good behavior. I think that's the quickest people have quieted down after
Yeah.
the greeting.
That was really impressive. I forgot to say hello to my balcony friends. Hey, y'all. Okay, who's our chalice lighter today?
It's Rebecca Wilson.
Oh, it's Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. As Rebecca lights our chalice, please give voice to our shared connections by saying our covenant together. The words can be found in your program and online in the text chat. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
So please rise as you're willing and able for our first hymn. It's Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear. It's number 1029 in the teal hymnals. I've got the fan on.
Number 1029. You can tell this hymn was not written in, it didn't come to us through the castle at, where was it? Never mind. Shall we sing? No, I'm saying it's not one of these old Lutheran hymns, and you can tell by the words at the end of the second verse, love goes the second mile with them. I thought it was amusing, but I was alone on that. Love knocks and waits for us to hear, to open and invite. Love longs to quiet every fear and seeks to set things right. Love offers life in spite of foes who threaten and condemn. Embracing enemies, love goes the second mile with them. Love comes to heal the broken heart, to ease the troubled mind. Without a word, love bids us start to ask and seek and find. Love knocks and enters at the sound of welcome from within. Love sings and dances all around and feels new life begin.
Please be seated. I invite any children to come down to the front to share our time for all ages. It'll be led by Miss Trish with a little information, a little introduction from Bianca.
We have one more who is taking that time. That's great. Yay. Yeah. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was born nearly 200 years ago. She was a free black woman, meaning she was not enslaved by a white person and forced to work for them. That was a good thing, but it didn't make her life easy. Her parents passed when she was very young, and so her uncle raised her. He ran a school for black children that she attended. That was a big deal because in many parts of the country, it was against the law for a black person to learn to read. When she got older, she worked for a family that owned a bookstore, and she read as many books as she could. As an adult, she became a writer and a speaker. Most of what she talked about was how wrong it was to enslave people. But even though many things were wrong and unfair, Ms. Harper was unable to write poems about the need to end slavery. She was able to write poems about the need to free slavery. She felt that it was her obligation to change what was happening. Sometimes, though, Ms. Harper wrote about happier things and times.
Thank you. This poem is called Dedication Number 11 that Frances Ellen Watkins Harper wrote, and it's about a woman who had to leave her home and seek for a safer place to live. She had a long journey ahead, and she had to take a child with her. And it sounds like this. I'm going to read it slowly so that you can hear the words and make a picture in your mind of what happened. And I have to tell you what one word means before we get there. And the word is woe. Not like, whoa, horses, but like, woe means sorrow, like the opposite of joy. Here's the poem. Oh, how happy was that mother. What a soothing of her pain when she saw her child reviving, life rejoicing through each vein. Does not life repeat this story, tell it over day by day, of the fountains of refreshment ever springing by our way? Here is one by which we gather on this bright and happy day, just to bask beside the fountain, making gladder life's highway, bringing unto hearts now aged, who have borne life's burdens long, such a gift of love and mercy as deserves our sweetest song. Are you listening? Okay. Such a gift that even heaven may rejoice with us below, if the pure and holy angels join us in our joy and woe. May the memory of the giver in this home where age may rest float like fragrance through the ages, ever blessing, ever blessed. The end.
The end.
And now we'll sing the children out as they go off to their RE class. Now we come to the time for our worship service for joys, sorrows, and concerns. Those of you out on YouTube land are not in this room, but your presence is still felt. If you could please type your joys and sorrows into the text chat. If you have a joy, sorrow, or concern to submit during the week, please write to Reverend Ben. It's minister@uustpete.org. And I didn't have any Ben didn't forward any, so if you've got any joys and concerns, bring them down and I'll... Oh, and Joe Wedman is going to place a stone in the water for each of our concerns.
So I have a concern from Joanne. She says her friend Scott's sister Penny has breast cancer.
And a concern from Karen and Dave Cole. Our son-in-law's father, Mel Silvers, is seriously ill. Keep him in your thoughts. I would also add a concern to just keep the people of both Palestine and Israel in your thoughts as they go through what they're going through, as well as Ukraine.
Yes.
Any others? Okay. Yes. Another sorrow, Ian O'Hara's wife passed away this past Sunday. Denise, I was going to say different. So keep him in your thoughts and his family in your thoughts and prayers. May we bring to mind and hold close to our hearts Mel Silvers, the people of the Gaza Strip and Israel, people of Ukraine, Joanne's friend, and all those known and unknown who are facing challenges and health concerns. Now please join us for our responsive reading. This is what happens when you copy and paste. Written by John Motter. So
May our hearts not become callous by the never-ending incidences of oppression and hatred that so many face today.
Rather, may we keep our hearts open to the positive efforts of so many people causing good trouble in the world. May we have the strength to demand and gain the right for all people to have a safe place to sleep, health care to keep them strong, and the knowledge that their lives matter.
The struggle is taking longer than it should, but we will get there if we continue to fight for what we all know is right. May all of us find a comforting and compassionate presence in the warmth of fellowship and community.
And we will place the final stone for those joys and sorrows that remain in our hearts, perhaps too tender to be spoken out loud. Now let's take a minute of silence together. The mystery is that we are connected, even when we feel apart. Let us rejoice in our beloved community that makes of the many one. So may it be.
So I was asked to find a poem that Frances Ellen Watkins Harper had written, and I went through a few of them and tried to pick out one that, really spoke to me. And so I stumbled across one that reminded me of the heaviness that I feel when I vote. Voting is a great thing, I do it, I love it, but at the same time, it puts a lot of pressure on me, and I feel this weight and this burden that I don't really know is normal. So I wanted to kind of give you guys a backstory as to why I chose this poem. And then also, before I recite it, I'm going to read pieces of an article that was written on the Washington Post that really kind of explains my feelings. I just couldn't believe somebody else was having the same thought. I know you all do that sometimes. You're like, I thought I was the only one thinking that. So here we go. So my thoughts about voting as a Black woman in America is written by Taylor Crumpton in the Washington Post. As the Democratic Party's most loyal and dependable voting bloc, Black women are essential. More than 90% of Black women voted for the Democratic candidate in 2020. And that's not even to mention all the work that we did for voter registration and turnout. Black women are the country's most powerful political force. We organize, we mobilize, we cried, we screamed, we went above and beyond. Every 4 years, the Democratic Party looks to me and countless Black women to save it. Our white women counterparts are not held to the same standard, especially not the 53% of those who voted for Trump in 2016. White women are granted forgiveness for their infidelity and wooed all over again every election cycle. With Black women, our Black women are expected to remain loyal and faithful. It's not a burden that I want to bear, and I'm tired. So the Black women's movement has never centered exclusively on the ballot box in our journey towards liberation and freedom. We're not political mules, and we are not here to save the world. So I read that, and I was like, oh, man, that just felt like, everything that I had been thinking every time I get ready to go and fill out my Scantron. So here's the poem that I found from Frances and it's called Aunt Chloe's Politics. And it was in Sketches of Southern Life, published in 1891. Of course, I don't know very much about these politics, but I think that some who run them do mighty ugly tricks. I've seen them honeyfuggle around and talk so awful sweet that you think them full of kindness as an egg is full of meat. Now, I don't believe in looking honest people in the face and saying when you're doing wrong that I haven't sold my race. When we want to school our children, if the money isn't there, where the black or white have took it, the loss we all must share. And this buying up each other is something worse than mean. Though I think's a heap of voting, I go for voting clean. That's it.
Thank you, Bianca. Now I invite you to say the UU St. Pete mission statement out loud. You thought you were going to get away with it without doing it since Ben wasn't here, but you're stuck. Our mission this week has 3 blank spots, if you can remember them. So our mission is to be an inclusive, evolving religious community that inspires spiritual and intellectual growth to make our world a better place. We bring our mission to life through our wide range of
ministries,
social justice, religious education, and pastoral care, and many more. So now it's our anthem with the UUSP Bell Choir. So.
was awesome. So, John, I think it's my turn.
Yes.
Ready? Okay, he's ready. So I have another poem to read. I hope you all like poems today. So this one really, really touched me because I recently visited Charleston and they still have the slave auction site intact, which I passed it and I was overcome with so many emotions. And how does this happen? How are people so cruel? How is that a possibility? And then you see all the things that happen in the world today, and you're like, I see the ugliness of mankind. There is beauty, but man, it's fragile. It can go just like that. So there's my little beginning to this poem. Let me get into it. Don't waste any more time. So many of Harper's poems dealt with the topic of slavery. The Slave Mother, written in 1854, captures the ugliness of the slave trade here in the U.S. Have you heard that shriek? It rose so wildly in the air it seemed as if a burdened heart was breaking in despair. Saw you those hands so sadly clasped, the bowed and feeble head, the shuddering of the fragile form, that look of grief and dread? Saw you the sad, imploring eye? Its every glance was pain, as if a storm of agony were sweeping through the brain. She is a mother, pale with fear. Her boy clings to her side, and in her curdling vainly tries his trembling form to hide. He is not hers, although she bore him. For him a mother's pains. He is not hers, although her blood is coursing through his veins. He is not hers, for cruel hands may rudely tear apart the only wreath of household love that binds her breaking heart. His love has been a joyous light that o'er her pathway smiled, a fountain gushing ever new amid life's desert wild. His lightest word has been a tone of music round her heart, their lives a streamlet bent in one. Oh, Father, must they part? They tear him from her circling arms, her last and found embrace. Oh, never more may her sad eyes grace his mournful face. No marvel then, these bicker shrieks disturb the listening air. She is a mother, and her heart is breaking with despair.
The first, the first enslaved Africans arrived in Virginia in 1619. By the time Harper was born, we had been enslaving Black people for a little over 200 years. What type of life was Harper facing as a baby? She was one of approximately 250,000 free African Americans here in the U.S. In comparison, there were 1.5 million enslaved individuals living here. And despite the passage of the 1808 Act prohibiting the importation of slaves by Thomas Jefferson, the enslaved population grew to nearly 4 million by the start of the Civil War. Laws limiting the rights of African Americans were fully ensconced, both individual, state, and federal law. The children born to a Black mother served according to the condition of the mother, meaning that a biracial child of an enslaved woman was also enslaved. A Black woman raped by her white enslaver had no recourse, since she was merely property without the rights of a person. There were laws on learning to read, how many people could meet as a group, requiring a pass to be away from the plantation at night, and so many more. These laws institutionalized the treatment of Black people, and they still have institutionalized those Black people today.
That's right.
Bianca gave a brief biography of Harper, during the time for all ages. Indeed, she was born in Maryland on September 24th, 1825, when slavery was still legal in that state. Her parents were formerly enslaved, but they had secured their freedom, but it didn't make life easy. In fact, she was orphaned by the time she was age 3. She lived with an uncle who ran an academy for children, and so she attended school until the age of 14. At that time, she had to leave for economic reasons, and so she went to serve a Quaker family that owned a bookstore. This really gave her the opportunity to continue to read and continue to learn. And so by the time she was 20, she'd moved to Philadelphia and published her first book of poetry. When the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 passed, the 25-year-old Harper moved to Ohio. Maryland then passed a law that stated any free person of color that entered the state would be arrested and sold into slavery. When a free man accidentally crossed the border, he was arrested and sold. He escaped, was recaptured, and then he died shortly thereafter. This is what really inspired her to devote her life to becoming an abolitionist. At 29, she'd published 2 books of poetry, had traveled on the abolitionist lecture circuit, married, had a child, been widowed, and then returned to the lecture circuit. And then, at 30 years of age, she saw the end of the Civil War and the start of Reconstruction. I would like to think that for Harper, her social activism was an integral part of her spirituality, that one did not exist without the other. A 2015 UU World article states, through what she called threads of fact and fiction, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper challenged Unitarians and other Christians to practice a form of religion that reflected a stronger sense of justice, a more Christ-like humanity on behalf of those homeless, ignorant, and poor. I have to come clean on something. We told a little bit of a white lie to the children this morning. Miss Trish did find the poem, and it was about a woman that had gone on a long journey with her child. And we were really happy that it was more of a light-hearted poem, because so much of her writings are on the darker side. But however, late Thursday night, while I was researching for this talk, I discovered that she found just an excerpt of the poem. The poem wasn't quite as lighthearted as we thought, but since I was bouncing between writing the service, packing boxes for the move, and then getting ready for the service, I just said, heck with it. We're going to go with that, and we'll leave it as is. We tell the kids there's a tooth fairy, and so why not? We don't have to be exactly honest on telling them the purpose of this poem, but the actual poem begins, outcast from her home in Syria, in the lonely, dreary wild, heavy-hearted, sorrow-stricken, sat a mother and her child. There was not a voice to cheer her, not a soul to share her fate. She was weary, he was fainting, and life seemed so desolate. Very cheery poem for children. The poem is actually the story of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar, and it comes from the book of Genesis, chapter 16. Hagar is Sarah's slave, and since Sarah can't have children, she gives Hagar to her husband, Abraham, so that they might have a child. Hagar does become pregnant, and Sarah becomes really jealous. And so Hagar runs away into the desert to avoid the harsh treatment. At the time of the poem's writing, she conceives that at the time that the poem is occurring, God comes to Hagar and produces a well so that they may drink. In that process, God renews a covenant and says, please return, go back and serve Sarah, and so Hagar does. So when she goes back, Hagar has a child, Ishmael, and it only makes matters worse. Sarah continues to be jealous and resentful, and so she sends So Abraham sends Hagar and the child out into the desert with just water and a loaf of bread. And God also promises to make a second nation of Ishmael's descendants. And so that's the reason that how the Hebrew people came to be. It's a really complex story, and it raises a lot of questions. No one in the story is actually painted in a favorable light. They all have their flaws. And there's multiple ways that one could look at this and one could view it. And one realizes that many times situations are not cut and dried. They're not either or, they're both and. And so is that what Harper attempts to do in all of her writings? Is she presenting a picture and then forcing the reader to decide on what's right for them, on how to interpret that? Enslaved Mother, Harper again uses complexity to appeal to the Christian beliefs of white people. Like some Christians today, a distorted interpretation of the Bible had been used to justify their actions that were immoral and still are immoral. The first 3 stanzas cruelly state that the child is not hers, because under laws at that time, he wasn't. In fact, many enslaved women were raped by their enslavers in order to produce children that could increase their wealth, either through working in the fields or in being sold outright. The 4th and 5th stanzas, though, refer to a light, a fountain. They say, "O Father." In other words, she's referring to God in those stanzas. This is the appeal to do what is right as a Christian. The poem ends with the return to the evilness of slavery and the pain of a mother who has lost her child, who is sold off, never to be seen again. That's so much of what she writes about through all of her history of writing. But Harper was also more than an abolitionist. She was also a suffragist and a member of the American Equal Rights Association. She gave a speech at the 1866 National Women's Rights Convention entitled, "We Are All Bound Up Together," in which she spoke about white suffragists. She stated, quote, "I do not believe that white women are dewdrops just exhaled from the skies. I think that, like men, they may be divided into 3 classes, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. You white women speak here of rights. I speak of wrongs." I chuckled as I pictured all these white suffragists sitting there and listening to this black woman talk to them and refer to them as dewdrops exhaled from the sky. And yet, when you think about it, that's how many Southern women were viewed as by their male counterparts. And so how many black men were lynched for looking the wrong way at those delicate dewdrops? Emmett Till is just one of many. I think that her analogy was much more powerful than I first thought when I read the poem. She split from the organization and formed the American Women's Suffrage Association, and this was after Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton had made racist comments about black men, and that they refused to support the Fifth Amendment, which did give black men the right to vote. I can't help but wonder what Harper would say about the country we live in today. Progress has been made, but how much? Some feel that racism isn't an issue anymore. Many commentators declared racism dead the day that President Obama is. But I also know that some people get tired of hearing me talk about racial justice. But for me, personally, social and racial justice work is an integral part of my spirituality. If I don't do it, I'm not at peace spiritually. I understand that not everyone feels that way, and that's okay, because again, it's not an either or, it's a both and. So I look to our principles to see if what I'm living is in line with the principles. Are the politicians representing me acting in line with my faith as a Unitarian Universalist? What about law enforcement? What about my conservative friends from childhood, from my town where the newspaper was a Republican Courier up until I was in high school? What about the person at the table next to me in a restaurant that is making racist comments? What about the people that say, don't all lives matter? Our governor has stated that there is no educational value in African American history. Our state legislature has passed laws saying that we can't teach anything that would make a student, meaning a white student, feel bad about themselves. Politicians have passed laws that prohibit doctors from using established and medically proven care for transgender individuals. They've banned books despite a little thing called the First Amendment. The Supreme Court overturned parts of the Civil Rights Act, and many states immediately enacted laws making it more difficult for people to vote. But it gets worse. According to a 2020 report by the Equal Justice Initiative, white Americans lynched at least 6,500 black people from the end of the Civil War to 1950, an average of 3 every 2 weeks for 8.5 decades. But since 2015, law enforcement has killed, on average, nearly 5 black people a week. Oh my God. So to hear people say that all lives matters or that they are colorblind seems a bit naive to me. As Unitarian Universalists that follow the 7 principles and now the recently adopted 8th principle, I feel that we should look within ourselves and ask, does my spirituality fall in line? Does my spirituality allow me to overlook the racial inequities that BIPOC individuals confront each morning when they leave their home? In 1859, the Anglo-African magazine published this quote by Harper: "We want more soul, a higher cultivation of all spiritual faculties. We need more unselfishness, earnestness, and integrity. We need men and women whose hearts are the homes of high and lofty enthusiasm and a noble devotion to the cause of emancipation, who are ready and willing to lay time, talent, and money on the altar of universal freedom. I believe truly in my heart that if Harper were alive today, she would agree with me when I say that that is exactly what we still and should want today. Amen. I say, blessed be."
Amazing. Thank you so much, John. Sorry, I needed a minute after that because that was so powerful. I'm like, I'm supposed to say something, but I need just a second. We gather here to learn, to be inspired, and to gather strength and to build community. In the sanctuary, the offering will now be given and received so that we may take care of our vital community.
now please stand as you're willing and able for our closing hymn, number 1014 in the teal hymnal. It's listed as standing on the side of love, but we'll substitute answering instead of standing.
That was actually Jason Sheldon, the composer of the song's idea, when it was brought to his attention that his original lyrics were a bit ableist. Answering the call. The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. Hunger in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
That was cute.
Please be seated. And if you're at home or planning to watch by Zoom, get a pencil and pen ready, because after the chalice extinguishing, I will read that number again. So now we invite you to say our chalice extinguishing as Bianca extinguishes our chalice. The words to USP's traditional chalice extinguishing words are in your order of service and online there in the text chat. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of courage. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world. Now again, the number, if you're joining by Zoom, is 970-4519-4602. John Lou Johnston said, "When we can truly extend our hands to one another in the loving acceptance, we shall overcome the past that haunts us now." Our worship service is over, but our service begins. We hope this time together will help you through your week and will help you remember you are not alone. Bianca and I will remain up front if people want to stop by, but otherwise, please grab a cup of coffee in Gilmore Hall and then rejoin if you want to hear the Ministerial Search Committee discuss understanding shared ministry. Thank you so much for contending today. And that's it, folks. Yep. The postlude, yes. I'm sorry. Ah. Yes, the postlude, and then you're free to go. You thought you were going to get away with it?